It wasn't a great start to the season for the Kansas City Chiefs, but they're heating up at the perfect time with Buffalo waiting around the corner. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Lauren Cox. On today's episode, we're going to talk about some of the best division races in the NFL. We got two in the NFC to discuss, two in the AFC to discuss, and one of those races includes the Kansas City Chiefs, who dominated the Washington Commanders on Monday Night Football, and they're heating up at the perfect time. Before we dive in, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen. Reminder that you can follow our show and hear new episodes ad-free daily on Amazon Music, so go check that out. And thank you for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Lauren, it was a beatdown, 28-7, Chiefs over Commanders. Quite frankly, Kansas City is looking exactly like the team that we thought that they could be at their best, and it wasn't even all great for the Chiefs either, but they still did the job and looked like the much better team.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens when Patrick Mahomes' weapons can all be fully healthy, and there's sort of this build-up effect where, like, Rice and Worthy are back, and so all of a sudden it's easier for Travis Kelce to do a little bit more damage because all of a sudden not all the attention's on him, and it sort of cascades and builds on itself in a way that feels a little bit unfair.
Yeah, and then it builds into the run game as well. 148 yards on the ground, 4.9 yards per carry. Pacheco, Kareem Hunt did their thing on the ground. They don't even have to use the talented rookie Brashard Smith all that much. It really seems like they're firing on all cylinders again, despite even having some mistakes early in the game that kept the Commanders in it. And my guy Ryan Tracy from Locked On Chiefs talked about the big primetime victory.
The Chiefs survived their own mistakes, Patrick Mahomes' interceptions, and a slew of penalties, but they got it done, and they had a game they had to have on national TV. It always helps when you're motivated, and it certainly looked like that from Travis Kelce, who got the job done, made history tonight, and was able to secure the win that this team needs to continue on its arc towards the AFC West and the AFC, and on and on and on. Kareem Hunt really put in the time and the effort, and particularly on the second touchdown, was really able to show the ad-lib ability that not just Patrick Mahomes has, but everyone around him. As Mahomes continues to lift, he's going to make a couple of mistakes. To survive tonight is pretty rare, but we're going to break it all down for you on Locked On Chiefs here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
And listen, I know that they're going up against a lot of backups on the Commanders, but the Chiefs defense, we could talk about the Chiefs offense all we want and how getting all the weapons back. I mean, Rashee Rice, 9 catches, 93 yards and a touchdown, just an absolute impact player right away. They're lining him up in the backfield and all that. The offense obviously is going to be the headline, but that Chiefs defense, I remember a couple of weeks ago, we used one of those clips from Locked On Chiefs, and they talked about how the defense usually doesn't round into form until week 5, week 6, week 7. They kind of got a head start this year, and this Chiefs defense has been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, shutting down Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt like that, who's been, their offense has been the number one rushing offense in football in terms of yards per carry this season. Like, even Mariota not being able to do much with his legs in this game. Like, they seem to be able to clamp down on that, and then you make them a little bit more one-dimensional in that regard, and then you put a lot on Mariota's shoulders, and it just felt like the formula was all there for a really strong Chiefs performance. And I thought George Karlaftis in particular, just a monster game, getting after the quarterback and setting a firm edge. Like, it's kind of the guys that, you have been a little bit quiet at times, but you're like, oh yeah, they're all fully capable of having big games whenever they need one.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing about the Chiefs. Just when you think, maybe Chris Jones is slowing down, hasn't been as good this year. We've seen some effort issues that have been questioned publicly, but just when that happens, somebody else is stepping up, and Karlaftis was absolutely fantastic. You do feel bad, though, for the Washington Commanders, a team that had all the magic in the world last year. Lauren, obviously, you know about how that magic worked for the Commanders, but this year they just don't have it. And the reality is they are super banged up. Terry McLaurin gets hurt again in this game. Jaden Daniels out. Just kind of a lot piling up on the Commanders, and that's something my guy David Harrison from Locked On Commanders talked about post-game.
The Washington Commanders entered Week 8 as a team in search of an identity, and in the first half of the game, kind of seemed to maybe find a little bit of that identity, but ultimately, halftime adjustments, the Kansas City Chiefs coaching staff just did a lot better, anticipating what their opponent was going to do. The Commanders came out in the second half, not necessarily flat, but certainly being taken advantage of a lot of left-to-right action by the Kansas City Chiefs, taking advantage of the fact that the Commanders just simply don't know how to set the edge right now, and then mesmerized play by the Washington Commanders defense as they watch Patrick Mahomes roam around behind the line of scrimmage, finding open receiver after open receiver, and ultimately the early possible advantage that they could have carved out just didn't hold, and the Kansas City Chiefs walk away with a multi-score lead win over the Washington Commanders, who now will look to take that first half effort, hopefully build it into a little bit more, heading back home for back-to-back home games against the Seahawks and the Lions. The season's still within reach, postseason opportunity still within reach, but the time to find it all and figure it all out certainly starting to wear thin as the season progresses. For more on this game and everything Washington Commanders, make sure you're checking out the Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And like he talked about, that's a difficult schedule. I think the Seattle Seahawks are one of the more underrated teams in the NFL right now. They're playing excellent football. We know that the Lions are a force to be reckoned with and a team that's going to show up every single week and give you their best. I think there's a great chance that the Commanders end up dropping to 3-7. And it's kind of crazy when they only lost 5 games last year and they're already to 5 losses. And with Jaden Daniels' health up in the air, Terry McLaurin's health up in the air, the holes that they had last year are showing up more now because that magic is kind of worn off a little bit. The edge rush issues, the offensive line issues. I'm having a hard time seeing the Commanders getting back into this thing. And I think at this point in time, if I had to make a declaration on them, I do not think that they make the playoffs.
Yeah, you were kind of hoping, like, could Mariota and Cliff Kingsbury find a way to just kind of smooth things over until they got healthier? Kind of like we talk about with the Bengals and the Ravens, right? Where it's like, can you just get us to the quarterback being healthy? And once Terry McLaurin comes back and once Jaden Daniels is back, and you can grab a few different guys here and there, that can you just sustain us long enough to get to that point? And it just doesn't feel like they're going to have that in them. And I think part of that is playing in a tough NFC East and having a tougher slate of schedule there. Whereas I think the Ravens and the Bengals have had some easier opponents on their schedules to kind of, skate by a little bit here and keep that hope alive. But Washington, I don't know. I guess I was expecting more from Dan Quinn's defense to be able to lean on a little bit more, but that because that side of the ball isn't quite as injured, but there's a talent deficiency there that's hard to overcome.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for them. And like you mentioned, the division, we're going to talk some division standings and things like that as we continue our episode. One of the divisions that we are not going to debate is the NFC East, because the Eagles are kind of running away with that one now. And again, like we talked about with some of the games coming up on the schedule for the Commanders, it's going to be hard to see them not only not challenging for the division with a little double negative there for you, but having a hard time getting in the playoffs as well. That's going to be something to watch. But speaking of those division races, we got tight ones all around the NFL, including the one that the Kansas City Chiefs are in after their win moving to 5-3, because the AFC West is an absolute bloodbath of football teams right now.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs. With features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance, you can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go, while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So, let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
All right, Lauren, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about that Monday Night Football game to cap off a crazy Week 8 in the NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs moved to 5-3, but they are still not leading their division because the Denver Broncos, coming off steamrolling the Dallas Cowboys, sit at 6-2 and lead that division. The Los Angeles Chargers, who were on top of the division at first, they're actually still ahead of the Chiefs as well with a win early in the season. It really helps that the Chargers were able to get those 3 wins at the beginning of the year in the division. That's going to help them a lot. But the Broncos are 0-1 in the division right now. The Chiefs are 1-1 in the division right now. Still plenty enough time to come back in that one. And Denver leading it. It's going to be even tougher now for them to hold on because they just lost maybe their best player. And we'll go back to my guy, Cody Rourke, who just in our Peloton ad for a little update on Patrick Surtain's status with the Broncos.
The Denver Broncos are going to be preparing for the Houston Texans, more than likely without Patrick Surtain, as his MRI came back with a strained pec, which means that he is now week to week, and it puts obviously his status for Sunday's game into doubt. Week to week means that they could just see how he feels on a week to week basis. But the Broncos play on Sunday. Then they have a short turnaround because then they have to face the Las Vegas Raiders on Thursday Night Football. And then their next game would be a home matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. And then they would go into their bye week here. Landing on short-term injured reserve is also an element of possibility here, which means that he would be out for the next 4 games, which includes the games I just mentioned. Denver would have their bye week, and then he'd be eligible to return on Sunday Night Football in Week 13 against the Washington Commanders. But obviously, the Broncos defense dealt a big blow by not having the reigning defending NFL defensive player on the field. But luckily, it is not a season-ending injury, but he is expected to miss some time.
Lauren, I'll tell you, I had a strained pec last week, and for a little while, I thought I was having a heart attack. That ain't nothing to play with, so I don't blame Patrick Surtain for heading to IR and making sure that's right. But you look at the remaining schedule for the Broncos until he gets back, and, you know, like Cody was talking about there, they play at Houston this week. Then they have the Raiders. Then they play the Chiefs, and that'll be a big game. And then they get their bye and come back against the Commanders. Then the Raiders again, like, you know, it's going to hurt to lose Surtain. He's one of the top 3 cornerbacks in the NFL, maybe the absolute best. That defense is really good, so maybe if the defense takes a step back, it could hurt the offense. But I'm looking at that schedule, and other than the game against the Chiefs, I think those are all wins for the Broncos, so they should be able to at least stay tied for the division by the time they get Surtain back.
Yeah, first, I appreciate you playing through injury today. I thought you were going to be on IR. Get your back up in here today, but
not me.
I'm with you there 100%. Like the Broncos are this weird team where it's like, I trust them the least of these 3 teams that we're talking about. And yet I think they're most likely still going to win the division in large part because of that schedule. Like, they should have some, there's no easy wins in the NFL, but some extremely winnable games coming up on their schedule. And then if they can just, split the 2 with the Chiefs in there, or split one of the 2, they play the Chiefs and the Chargers twice, I think in there. No, they got the Chiefs twice in there.
Yeah, they got the Chiefs and the Chargers, or the Chiefs 2 more times, and then the Chargers 1 more time on the final game of the year. So they got their division games ready for them.
Yeah. All they got to do is be like healthy enough and split a Chiefs game and maybe get a Chargers back. But like, I think they're going to have a much easier path. Whereas like some of these other teams are talking about, have a few more like playoff ready opponents sitting on their schedule. Especially I think Kansas City is going to have a little bit more of a test along the way.
Yeah, Kansas City definitely is going to have a tougher schedule with that first place schedule. But you look at the Chargers. Look at the Chargers' next 4 games. At the Titans, against the Steelers, at the Jaguars, and then against the Raiders. Those could all be wins. 4 straight wins. It would make 5 straight wins for the Chargers if they were able to pull that off. So it's crazy that they lose to the Giants. They lose to the Commanders in embarrassing fashion. Barely beat the Miami Dolphins, lose to the Colts by double digits, but they get the Vikings, they get the Titans, they get the Steelers, the Jags, the Raiders. They could absolutely flip that back around, and the team that we thought was going to run away with this division after the first 3 weeks could be right back in it, and technically they're ahead of Kansas City right now because they have the head-to-head win over Kansas City. So it's like, I'm looking at the Chargers, and I'm thinking, they got Joe Alt back. They played great football. Why shouldn't we trust them?
Do we trust them to stay healthy still? I mean, yes, they're getting healthier, and like I almost wonder, like, is it too? Are they getting healthy too early? Like, you kind of want to get everybody back, like for that last push, but now they're getting in that middle push, and I think, yeah, as long as they are healthy, they're probably the team of these three I would trust the most, among them between schedule and ability there. But like, there's just always been, not always, but there's been consistently something about the Chargers that's hard to trust until they can really prove it to you almost organizationally that they can sustain success.
Yeah, and I hate to use, the sins of the father and visit them upon the son or whatever the saying is there. But at the end of the day, because the Chargers are just known for chargering, I can't trust them out of these three also. Like, I got to ride with Denver to hold on, which I did pick Denver to win the division before the season anyway, so maybe I should just be loyal. You know what I mean? But I still think Kansas City is the best team. It's hard for me to pick them to come back in the division just because of the way the schedules work out and things like that. But, if you ask me which team's going to go the furthest in the playoffs, I'm still trusting Kansas City more. They're looking like the team that I thought. And just because they got off to that slow start that we talked about doesn't mean that they can't still be the team that people thought that they could be coming into the year.
Yeah, they just got to make sure they make the playoffs. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but like if you're third in your division and you got wild card teams in other divisions that you're competing with, like, yeah, it's great that they have some divisional wins, but like if the Broncos and Chargers just have the easier schedule are ahead of you, like, I'm not saying I think the Chiefs are gonna miss the playoffs, but I do think they might sweat it a little more than we might expect.
100%. And when you start to look at how things are going to line up, somebody's going to win in the AFC North. The Steelers are currently leading at 4-3. I don't know if we can trust them, and we'll probably talk Baltimore later this week as they can kind of climb out of their hole with a good schedule ahead of them. But you're going to have two teams out of the AFC East as well, with the Patriots and the Bills, who we'll talk about in a second. The Colts are obviously going to be the AFC South representative there, but the Jags and the Texans, 4-3, 3-4 respectively, they could climb back into this. So if you do one of the AFC East teams that doesn't win that division, and then two of the teams that aren't the Chiefs, that only leaves one wild card spot for them to get. So they got to stay on their P's and Q's here and make sure that they take care of business. But we do move to the AFC East, where the New England Patriots moved to 6-2 on the year after another easy win over the Browns. And you start to look at the Patriots' schedule, and it's like, oh my, like, they are going to win a ton of games. And that makes it difficult for Buffalo, because Buffalo has a very difficult schedule. I think they got to take on the Chiefs here and deal with that. They're kind of dealing with the things that the Chiefs are dealing with a tough schedule. And now the Patriots have a quarterback that's playing MVP level football as well. And my guy Nick Cattles from Locked On Patriots talked about Drake Maye.
You want to know how good Drake Maye was in the second half of this game? Evan Lazar posted, Drake Maye put up a perfect passer rating in the second half. Perfect. A 158.3 passer rating. That's what Drake Maye did against the best defense he's faced in the second half of this football game. Drake Maye in the second half today was 8 for 8, 114 yards, not one, not two, but 3 touchdowns.
I mean, Drake Maye has been absolutely incredible. He is in the MVP race now, a top 5 candidate for that. And you look at Buffalo, they play the Chiefs this week. They have the Bucks on their schedule. They have the Texans, the Steelers. They have the Patriots again in New England. They have the Eagles in the penultimate week of the season. Like, there's the potential here for Buffalo to really struggle to win this division. And the Patriots, you look at their schedule. I mean, they play the Falcons, then the Bucks. That's a tough one. That'll be an interesting matchup. But then Jets, Bengals, Giants, Bills, Ravens, Jets, Dolphins. I mean, other than the Bills and the Ravens and the Bucks, none of those games are very difficult. So this, right now, if I had to, I'd still ride with New England to win this division, because I just don't think their schedule poses very many threats.
Yeah, there's some similarities to the Broncos here, where, like, looking at it, like, they shouldn't be this good. And it'll
right.
The coaching staff and Vrabel and everything for getting them to play better than they are. But I just wonder, like, can they sustain this? And is it being inflated a little bit by playing the Saints, Titans, and Browns in the last 3 weeks? And are we going to, again, like, it doesn't get that much harder, but like, they get the Buccaneers in 2 weeks, and that'll be a real challenge. And maybe if Joe Burrow is healthy for the Bengals in a few weeks after that, I mean, we'll see. But even Flacco has done some things for them. And when they play the Bills and Ravens towards the end of the year, like, they'll be really tested in there. And I think if I'm Buffalo, I just got to find a way to stay afloat and kind of keep hanging in there and wait for maybe New England just to, like, not come crashing down to earth necessarily, but just normalize back down, regress back towards closer to the means of where we actually thought they'd be a little bit less dominant so far. So I agree. It's a tricky one where I think they're on a good path, but it's hard to fully trust it until we see them actually do it.
No, I agree with you 100%. The problem for me is other than those 3 games that we talked about, I don't think the schedule really will challenge New England consistently, and it may be one of those things where we have to lean on those games to know who they are because they had so many cupcake opponents on the way. They deserve their credit for winning those games. It's the NFL. You can lose any given Sunday, but it's also we can't give them too much credit because of the teams that they're dominating against. But with that in mind, we got to move to the NFC because the NFC West might be the best division in football, and the Rams just made their team even better with a big-time trade of a cornerback who came from a team that I happen to know a little bit about. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Rougiant. Let's be real, making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired. It happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rougiant comes in. Rougiant.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougiant makes it easy to get started. You just get connected with a board-certified doctor, 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL to get 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL, and don't forget to use our code LockedOnNFL so they know that we sent you. It's Rougiant. Stop making excuses and start making moves. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps the game super exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. I love an NBA same game parlay on FanDuel, putting more on points, under on assists, more on the threes, under on the rebounds. All that together, again, for a shot at a bigger payout. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers, $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Once again, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Lauren, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the Chiefs' big-time win on Monday Night Football. We talked about some hot division battles in the AFC. Now we want to keep that division talk going as we get over to the NFC. And we start with the NFC West, where you have the Los Angeles Rams currently leading the division. Well, technically the Seattle Seahawks are currently leading the division with a 1-1 division record. The Seahawks are 5-2. The Rams are 5-2. San Francisco is still right there at 5-3 after losing this week to the Houston Texans, but they're 3-0 in the division. So San Francisco has a really nice kind of built-in runway for them if they could just find a way to be tied with record, at least as things sit right now. And the Rams are loading up even more. They traded for cornerback Roger McCreary from the Tennessee Titans. He's a slot cornerback. All they had to do was a little 5th round, 6th round pick swap to get him. Really solid slot corner. And with the Rams and the way they're working on defense right now, I think that can help them. But, you go through this list. I know that Seattle's playing well. We'll talk them. I know that San Francisco can be counted on to always compete. But the Rams, I loved the Rams before the season, and call it confirming my priors, Lauren. But I still love the Rams here, and I trust what they got more than I trust what they got in Seattle.
Well, they're just the most proven of the group.
Yes.
we have seen Matthew Stafford be a Super Bowl quarterback even at an extended age like this, and we've seen them be able to retool and still be a battle-tested, proven team, even with some younger guys on that defense. Whereas like Seattle has been playing really well. I don't want to take anything away from that. It's just like when the rubber meets the road and we get down the line, how much do we fully trust Sam Darnold and that offense the way things kind of fizzled out at the end in Minnesota? And then the 49ers is purely a health injury question of like, yeah, if they're fully healthy, sure, we'd trust them, but we just don't trust that can be the case. So it's kind of Rams by default until somebody else can really prove it one way or the other.
And the problem for the 49ers is they can't be healthy enough to regain my trust because they're not getting Fred Warner back. They're not getting Nick Bosa back. Brandon Ayuk, I mean, he may not play the entire year at this point. Like his injury sounded really bad. They do not seem optimistic that he'll be back. Even when they go to the backup quarterback in Mac Jones, he's super banged up and struggling, you know what I mean? So it's like, I just can't believe that they'll ever get healthy enough, but Seattle is an interesting one. And no matter what we want to say about Seattle, whether we trust them at the end or not, they have been absolutely on fire recently, and that's what our guys over at Locked On Seahawks talked about.
Going into the bye, the Seahawks are sitting pretty at 5-2, as Mike McDonald said. After Monday's win against the Texans, they have not played a complete game yet, but they've got 5 victories in their first 7 games. 5 of their last 6, they've been in the win column, sitting in a 3-way tie atop the toughest division in the NFL right now, with the Rams and 49ers having the same records. And this really begs the question, who is going to be the team of the 3 to crack first?
And that is the question. Which team will crack first? And I think we might have saw San Francisco crack a little bit with that bad loss against the Texans where they weren't really in the game for most of the game. But I think Seattle has the talent on defense with Mike McDonald at coach. And I think they do have a good formula with Clint Kubiak as the offensive coordinator. I think Seattle will stay in this, and I kind of like Seattle to stay in this hunt throughout and make the playoffs. But as we said, until I see Sam Darnold kind of correct what we saw from him last year at the end of the season, there's no way I can trust them over Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay and the Rams.
Yeah, I'm wondering how the Seahawks hold up over the course of the rest of the schedule. That it's not particularly challenging in the non-division games, but you have such a couple of key stretches there where you got the Cardinals and Rams back to back coming up after their Commanders game after the bye week, and then later on down the stretch you got the Rams and the 49ers in 2 of the last 3 games, and you still get the Colts in there as well. Like I think there's going to be a real learning opportunity there of what kind of progress they've actually made, because they lost to the 49ers in week 1 and they barely beat the Cardinals in week 4 on Thursday Night Football. Those 1-score games are always so hard to trust that like the success is sustainable. So like when they talk there about Mike McDonald saying they haven't played a complete game yet and they're winning, that's great. But like you got to find a way to win complete games, because if you got to find a way to complete games, because you're not going to be able to keep winning those games until you make that next step. I think that's part of what the Chicago Bears just figured out this past Sunday against the Baltimore Ravens. Like you can't keep, you get a little lucky in some of these incomplete games, and eventually it catches up to you against an opponent that maybe you thought you should have beat.
Yeah, and I think that could be the case for Seattle. And for me, I'll just be keeping my eye on their run game. Can they consistently run the football? That's what they're going to need to do at the end of the day. So we'll see if they're able to do that. But the final division that we discussed is the NFC North. And you mentioned the Bears, who took a bad loss to the Baltimore Ravens. Kind of takes them a step back, in my opinion, from where we were on them last week. And it leaves the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions at the top of that division. The Packers 5-1-1 on the year, but boy, it doesn't feel like that for the Packers. The conversation around the Packers, and I admit it's even myself, my feeling around the Packers doesn't matter. Like, I trust Dan Campbell and the Lions way more than I do the Packers, and it's kind of shocking that the Packers record is as good as it is. And, that's really what it comes down to me, is I trust Dan Campbell here more than I trust the Packers, who seem to make young mistakes in big moments. And in Detroit, they trust Dan Campbell more than any coach of all time. They're ready to give him a lifetime deal, according to my guy Matt Derry from Locked On Lions.
If Detroit got to the Super Bowl, it'd be the most unbelievable thing in this town, and 2 weeks of hype and all of that. But Dan Campbell, that they're shooting for the stars. And the way he's coached and the way he's rallied players and the way he has his teams prepared and how they haven't lost 2 games in a row in 3 years is remarkable. So to hear somebody like Colin say, lifetime contract for this guy, when? when I've lived in this market, I lived in this town since 1996. I'm going on close to 30 years here in Detroit, and I love it here. When has anybody ever talked about a Lions coach in that way?
Never, right? Ever. So, I think for me, maybe it's an overreaction, but before the season, I doubted Dan Campbell. I'm in the boo-boo box now. He doesn't deserve to be doubted, and maybe I'm overcorrecting to that doubt, but I just trust the Lions to play their best in the biggest moments and always be ready for the moment because of Dan Campbell. Whereas with the Packers, and I don't know that it's Matt LaFleur's fault directly, but just the Packers have such a young team, and, Jordan Love shows all this potential, but we also have seen the Jordan Love who makes the big mistake in the big moment, and that's more consistent to me than what I can expect from the Lions. So the consistent inconsistency of the Packers for me is outweighed by the trust that I have in Dan Campbell and the Lions. So I'm going to rock with the Lions in this one.
Yeah, if you ask Packer fans, there's a lot of discomfort around Matt LaFleur right now. And same with coordinator Jeff Hafley there. Like, I think the fan base is feeling like game management and play calling type of decisions are what's holding them back more, because they have been, the Packers fans were nervous in the first half against the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. They were really, really nervous against the Cardinals, and they were even sometimes too difficult against the Bengals in moments, and you're tied to Cardinals. Like, they're another one of these teams that aren't doing a complete game like the Seahawks, and you wonder eventually, does it catch up with them again the way it did against the Browns a few weeks ago? Like, are they always going to have those doubts? Whereas the Lions are very clearly the most complete of these teams, that they're certainly not without their flaws, but they know how to overcome them consistently and sort of build a roster that can withstand them. Yeah,
that makes a ton of sense. And I just, something about the Packers, like I was saying, 5-1-1 sounds good, but it just doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel right, and I don't know that I look at them as a 5-1-1 team. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, Lauren Cox, as we tell you every episode. Thanks for tuning in, and stay safe out there.